So, from cosmetics to community-driven collections to carpet. So, what was interesting listening to both talks before was kind of the role of the corporate. So whether it was HP Source or if it was L'Oreal or those, business really has a role to play in solving problems. And a lot of businesses can learn from people such as yourselves about the need to drive change. In fact, as purchasers, whether you're buying cosmetic products or you're taking those 2 minutes to make a beach clean, business takes notice of that. And in my context, with the carpets, when we're selling to large companies and corporates, their new employees, the people they recruit, are more sustainably minded. They're asking their employers, what am I working around? Am I working in a sustainable office? What am I doing to contribute? So really what I'm going to talk about here is the role that business can play. I'm going to give the example that we use. And really this is about turning something that's very negative into something very positive. So these are our carpets. They're quite pretty. Got a little bit of a tweed weave going on there. I'm going to be low on the carpet shot, I promise. But really what this is about is our story and then what we can do for communities. So Interface, we're the world's largest manufacturer of carpet tile. We're also one of the most sustainable companies in the world. On an index run by Globescan, we're ranked number 3 behind Patagonia and Unilever. But where did that start? Let's go back to the mid-90s. MC Hammer's out. Music was very different. Seattle riots have been happening because people were kind of saying, we need to think about the environment. And that's what our customers started saying to us. They started saying, what are you doing about the environment? And this is back in '94. And this is our founder, Ray Anderson. Hard-nosed businessman, had built Interface up to be the largest carpet tile manufacturer in the world. He'd never really thought about sustainability before. He wasn't an environmentalist at heart. It wasn't even his mindset. But when he was posed that question, he kind of said, I don't know what to say, actually. Let me go and find someone to talk to. I don't have a chief sustainability officer at the time because it didn't exist as a role. But the people he spoke to were people within the company and also people outside. So he started speaking to ecologists like Paul Hawken and scientists such as Janine Benyus, who does some great work around biomimicry and mimicking nature. And they started to tell him what's really happening on the ground. Now, every single kind of corporate leader and every single person in this room, when you think about your relationship with sustainability and the environment, it's a very personal thing, isn't it? It always comes from the world you're living in. And the same case was for Ray. His grandchildren were like 8 or 9 at the time, and he thought, what world are they going to live in? And the more he thought about Interface, we were using polymers in our products, we were using oil, we were in a way pillaging the world. The more he felt a bit like a criminal. He gave a speech kind of saying, businessmen like me, industrialists, will be considered the corporate criminals in the future. It really was a spear in his heart. And what he decided was, let's turn this around. Let's make Interface the most sustainable company it can be. And we have an aim by 2020 of having no negative impact on the world. In fact, going beyond that, beyond 2020, we want to start being a business that has a positive impact. We start kind of giving back, being restorative. So what we've done is we've used a lot of recycled content. You can see our carpets are forming a nice little runway as you walk in. And we got really good at using recycled content, and our factories, we reduced the energy. We did all the things that we should do. But then we started to think, what can we do more as a business? Because when you think about whether it's marine plastics or the environment, it's not just about a material. When you're listening to Spezia is a good example. It's about what impact you're going to have with communities. The environment isn't just trees. The environment is us. It's all an ecosystem that lives together. So the question that inspired the Networks project that I'm going to talk about today was, what could a carpet tile do to tackle poverty and inequality? And if we think about as a global issue in the world today, poverty is key. So this is what we're looking at. How can we link the products we make with local communities? How can we use it to empower? And also, how can we also tackle a big environmental issue? So, plastic waste, and I think you'll hear a couple of stats today. The ones I'm going to give you is this. Every year, between 12 and 15 million tonnes of plastic waste goes into our sea. What does that really mean? I had a nice challenge over dinner last night to explain it. With my thinking cap on, and this is what I've come up with. So, 50 million tonnes. If you think about garbage vans, tell I work for an American company, garbage vans, rubbish trucks, we're talking 500,000 of those. How much rubbish goes into a single rubbish truck? 400 to 500 households worth of waste goes into every rubbish truck. And then think about, that's a household. Think about how much waste you put out this week to be collected, whether it's mixed recycling or separated. It's a staggering amount. And it's happening all over the world. This is a picture from the Diamond Bank in the Philippines, where there isn't a great waste infrastructure. And this is waste just piling up on the beaches. Often, if you go to a beautiful resort and you drive for 5 minutes around the corner, this is what you see. This doesn't tend to find its way into the Crystal magazine or the Thompson or the TUI magazine. But if you get the chance, just walk around and take that little journey to go and see what's happening with the waste. So how does this affect communities? Well, it affects fishermen. I mean, it's nice to be viewed, there's a strong tradition of fishing here. When nets are in the sea, they tend to catch fish, so ghost fish. How many of you guys have heard of the term ghost fishing? So it's the idea of these nets, they literally float around and they'll catch fish, which then can't be caught. And if you're a fisherman, it's not ideal at all. So waste plastic here posing a real problem. It's also a problem for the marine life. You often see pictures of kind of turtles and seals that have been caught in the nets. But let's talk about turning something very negative into something very positive. Because this material here is exactly the same material that you walked on when you walked into this room. This is nylon 6. So what we can do here is we can transform these nets into carpet. And just to give you a view of how it works, I'm going to try and play a video. I can see if this works, but hopefully the sound will be okay. Or there may be later. I'm going to not do the video because it's going to jump around, but that's okay. Ooh. So without the video, I will explain it. It's more of an organic form. But basically what we've created is a community-based supply chain for fishing nets, where you can transform them into our yarn for our carpet tiles. Really, to go into the key points of this, these nets are collected by the community. Walking away from the mic. And basically, waste is becoming wealth. There can be a value put on these. Imagine, as a kind of analogy, fair trade coffee or fair trade cacao. This is about empowering those communities to turn what normally would have been worthless into something useful. And it is useful because we can put it into our supply chain. This is our first load of nets that came over from the Philippines in a big container. And what I want to say about this is those little projects that start from some of the people in this room, those projects about turning fishing nets into a skateboard or turning nets into a shoe, those inspire and they really grab a lot of attention. And the next step from that is to scale to give access to mainstream supply chain. Because when you can actually have containers of this size going, then you can really affect a difference. So I think there's space in this sphere for both those little projects, those little social enterprise projects that kind of get business thinking. Business has to wake up, realise and scale it, and that's how we're going to see change. I kind of want to push the fact that business doesn't have to be evil as such, but it perhaps has to open up its eyes and realise the role it needs to play. So these are nets entering our main supply chain. But then we wanted to do more. We wanted to see if we could empower communities. We didn't just want to be going in and buying nets at a kind of one person would just go and hoard them all and it wouldn't work. We needed to be cleverer than that. So what we did is we set up community banks. 2 billion people in this world do not have access to finance. That's a staggering amount. And if you're a fisherman in a community in the Philippines, for you to go to the bank, you actually have to travel for 3 or 4 hours a day. And that's time you don't have. You know, that's time you're busy enough trying to put food on the table. So what we did is we set up these community banks. And one thing I'd say is that as a business, working in community is something you have to be a bit careful about because we're not used to working in community. So we joined forces with the Zoological Society of London. So you guys might know them as London Zoo. They run Whipsnade and London Zoo. They've got a strong track record of working with communities on conservation for over 80 to 100 years. They knew what they were doing, and they could kind of work with these communities to explain what we were thinking about fishing nets and what they were thinking around conservation. It's a great example of a business NGO partnership, moving beyond just kind of sponsorship or donations into a kind of tactical, strategic partnership. And it's great for those guys because it really builds some investment with those communities and a lot of trust because they want to be protecting the environment. These are mangroves. Mangroves are really important because they suck in a lot of the carbon. They're 10 times more efficient as carbon sinks than forests. Not that forests are bad, but just saying just the impact that they can have. And they take a long time to grow. If you're a community and someone comes in and says, stop fishing, grow mangroves, you kind of think, well, why? Why don't I keep on doing what I'm doing? However, with this model, when ZSL come in, they're providing access to finance, a route to the supply chain for interface, and over a long time they can kind of go, have you thought about seaweed farming? Something you can invest your new savings into. They can start bringing some livelihood change. It's a more gradual process. They can work with a community. One thing I was thinking about being here in Bude and listening to the projects here was this today is all about local action. And that's actually the same with our communities in terms of how they've innovated. So we have this community bank, and they kind of said, why don't we have an environmental fund? So when we put our money in, why don't we put a little bit aside each time for projects that we want to do as a community? So they took out the model we brought to them and fashioned it in a way where they can have more local, immediate impact. That's pretty damn smart. They evolve our models. They're really our third partner in what we do. That was a locally driven change. And now those environmental funds are paying for mangrove work. They're choosing what they want to spend it on, which is that's not just financial empowerment, that's environmental empowerment too. So where have we got to? Over 500 families now have access to finance. We've expanded in the Philippines and replicated our model in Cameroon, and we're looking to expand further. We've almost collected 100 tonnes of nets, but where are we going to go? By 2020, we would have given access to finance for over 10,000 families. I would say hopefully more. We would have created a better marine environment for 1 million. For a better marine environment, we're talking cleaner beaches, cleaner mangroves, a cleaner place for their families to live. And then, I like this, 10,000, 1 million, that's what Austin Powers is. We would have protected 1 billion square metres of oceans and coastlines. And to put that in perspective, if I take all the tiles that Interface have made since the mid-90s, it's basically 1 billion square metres. It's a huge amount of floor. So this is the power that carpet can have. But how did we make this happen? What were the important parts? To me, partnership has been key. So I've spoken a little bit about ZSL as our partners in making this happen, but we also had to do something else. We don't make yarn. We make carpet, we buy the yarn. Aquafil are the yarn company that we were close to, and we knew that they were working on how to depolymerize nylon and reuse it, but they've been a key part of the movement around marine plastics. You guys might hear their brand that's called Econil, which you'll see being used with Finisterre locally, also G-Style Raw, and also Kelly Slater's Outer brand. They're all using Econil. So what was interesting for us was we were actually supplying our supplier. We're used to talking about, can we buy the yarn cheaper, please? It's generally the conversation. But the whole discussion was very different when we're saying, we want to supply you fishing nets that are going to improve the environment and improve people's lives. A very different conversation to have. Equally, with our custom base itself, it's been really exciting because the conversations stop just being about carpet and they start being, if you go to Facebook, they'll go, that's interesting what you're doing, providing access to finance. We want to provide access to the internet, aside from exploding satellites last week. But that's something they're really focused on. It's really changed for us as a business, the discussions our sales and marketing teams have. It's allowed them to grow immensely in terms of their depth of conversation. And it's also led to other manufacturers saying, we like what you do. Maybe we're thinking about how we can make our products have more social and environmental value. These are great discussions to have, and ones that 20 years ago it wouldn't have been the case. So we're looking to scale. There'll be more nets to collect. There's a lot of coastline for us to work with. I'm going to try and play another video. This could be interesting. to kind of wrap up on how this all works. There we go. So networks is what we call hitting a triple bottom line. It's good for the environment, it's good for people, and it's good for us as a business. And what I'd ask you guys to do is, in the decisions that you make as consumers, the decisions you make in kind of purchasing business things you do in your job, or if you are a business or an agency thinking about what your next project, try and hit all three. Try and make something that makes business sense, that also is driving environmental change and is also driving social change. And we're here to help, and I know plenty of people that will help you guys along the way. Any questions, come and ask. Otherwise, thank you very much.